It's a false alarm. Okay. False flag, as they say. All right. So, Elul is called Yemei Ratzon. Reish Tzadik Vav Nun. So we're going to explore a little bit what the meaning of that is, and also in the context of Parshas Shoftim, which was the last week's Parsha, and is a critical Parsha for the beginning of Elul. And I want to look at Sefer Shoftim as part of the larger picture of Sefer Devarim. So we spent a lot of time in the book of Bamidbar looking at the overall structure. But we haven't done that for Devarim, mainly because I wasn't here, but also because we took a little recess. But I'd like now to revisit that and then understand how Elul and Devarim together create this concept of Yemei Ratzon, what Ratzon really is, according to the Sfarim HaKadoshim. So the Sefer HaMitzvos of the Chinuch, in his introduction to his book of Mitzvos, tries to define what the book of Devarim as a whole, which is replete with mitzvos, right, its focus is. Now we know Devarim is called, of course, Mishnah Torah. Now Mishnah Torah is akin to the word Mishnah, which is really the oral tradition, right? So the fact that it's called Mishnah Torah already should identify it as the beginning, a separation from the rest of the Torah into a new dimension of Torah. The book of Devarim is a different dimension of Torah. It has a connection to the oral tradition. As Chazal tell us, the difference between the first 4 books and the last book is that the first 4 books, Moshe Rabbeinu was merely a voice box for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Through his mouth, through his voice, Hashem spoke to Bnei Yisrael directly. Not so Sefer Devarim. Sefer Devarim, Moshe spoke to the Jewish people, right? Words of Torah that were inspired by Hashem, but the mind and articulation of it had Moshe's input. In other words, he wasn't just a voice box. His intellect engaged the process. Now you'll ask me, well, if that's the case, how could it be considered Torah? It should be considered Nevi'im, or, right, like a Nevuah. It's no longer on the category of Torah, right? It should be Navi. The first book of Navi should be Devarim. Well, in a sense it is, in a sense it's not, because Moshe is the transitional person between Torah Shebichsav and Torah Shebal Peh. So there is elements of both present. In fact, you could look at Sefer Yoshua as an extension of Sefer Devarim in a sense, because Yoshua was completing, at least, for the most part, the job that Moshe Rabbeinu set out for him. But Moshe, it's interesting to note, and this is why I look for a structure, is that it has to be logical. So the Sefer Chinuch says that and he argues with the Ramban. He says, no, ein muktam u'muchar b'Torah. So when you look at Devarim, it could be a potpourri of mitzvos. What are some of the mitzvos we've been reading about, or that we read about in this past week's Parsha? It's like a plethora of mitzvos. Name a few. What's that? Okay, laws of in Aved. What are some of the laws we learned about in Shoftim? We learned about the Melech, the din of the Melech. We learned about the Navi. We learned about what other mitzvos did we have included? Dafka in Shoftim. Zakein Mamre, the rebellious judge, right? We had Ir Miklat. We had Egla Rufa, the laws of Milchama. I mean, it's a lot of things. And what is the connection between all these mitzvahs? All right, so we need to understand if indeed Devarim is the first articulation of Moshe Rabbeinu giving over Torah to Bnei Yisrael, utilizing his own mind and his own words, that it was the greatest and best organized presentation that the world has ever and will ever see. Which is why Chazal say that there's a machlokas whether dorshim smuchim or ein dorshim smuchim. If you look at the parshas of the Torah like building blocks, right? Samach and a pei notes either parshas stuma. Each section, each paragraph of the Torah is like a link that links to the next one, right? Think of it as a chain with links, but each one has an independent structure. So you might say, well, why is the proximity of this? Why this one is connected to that one? Ma inyan shmita etzel har Sinai, right? When we speak about Bahar Sinai, what's going on? It's actually not the best example. In the book of Devarim, everyone agrees that we are doresh smuchim, that there is a logical sequence. Logical sequence. Whereas in the rest of Torah, you might say, like Rashi does, ein muktu muchar b'Torah, and the Chinuch wants to say, that carries over to Devarim too. You can't pin me down and say that there's such a structure here. But the Ramban does not opine that way. The Ramban's shita is, the Torah is sequential unless the Torah tells you otherwise. This is the Shitas Ramban. And I think the Shitas Ramban is especially relevant for the book of Devarim, where we now have human input, which of course is a much more limited intellect than the divine intellect. So I understand that in the other books, which were Hashem's words, who are we to know, you know what I'm saying, exactly why everything fits together in the way that it does? It may be, a sod. But somehow, Torah comes a little more down to earth in the book of Devarim, just a step. Now, when Moshe Rabbeinu dies, it says that Otoniel ben Kenaz, who was one of the first shofet, right? During the days of Shiva, Moshe Rabbeinu reconstructed 3,000 halachos using the tools that Moshe gave him to analyze the Torah. What are some of the tools that we use? Kal v'chomer, right? Gezeira shava, we infer from the simpler law, the more strict law. Gezeira shava, we look at matching words, word patterns. What do they call that? Syllogisms? Not syllogisms. Syllogisms are in a row, right? So human intellect can be applied to Torah, but the minute Moshe, especially when the minute Moshe Rabbeinu disappears, that's what we're stuck with. We have nothing other than our own minds to engage Torah. Hence, we move to Torah Sheba'al Peh. If we don't have the Masorah from Moshe Rabbeinu and from the greatest of the teachers to help us decipher the words of the Torah, we're lost. But in Moshe's day, this book of Devarim was something of a hybrid. It was both the words of Hashem and the words of Moshe and the thought structure and intentions of Moshe combined, which itself is not easy to explain, but that's what Chazal tell us. And that's why it's called Mishnah Torah. Mishnah Torah. Because it's both Mishnah and Torah. That's why I'm putting it that way. That's how you can easily remember. It's Mishnah and it's Torah. It's something oral, but it's also Torah. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu presented himself to Hashem at the Sneh as a great speaker, or as or that he flunked speech, the easiest course that ever college ever offered. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol miro. What is it? What does kvad peh v'kvad lashon? By the time Moshe gets out of Mitzrayim, it's Az Yoshir Moshe. And at the end of the Torah, in Dvarim, he says, Kisvu li es ha shira hazos, which is Hazinu, which will be coming up towards the end of the year. Moshe moves from being inarticulate in his own words to being the most poetic. Shira in Hebrew is a poem. Kisvu li es ha shira hazos. It's not a musical song. It's a poem. I think that's how they say it in modern Hebrew, right? A poet is a I don't know what they call it, but a shira is a poem. How did Moshe transform himself from being, flunking speech 101 to getting a PhD in divine literature of the highest magnitude that ever was achieved? Well, that's the process of becoming Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem transformed Moshe. You might say that all that work, being the Navi, the voice of Hashem, gave Moshe the preparation to become the articulate. And his soul opened up. And that chelik of his neshama, right, that was able to give over Torah was no longer blocked. And it flowed like a song. It just flowed. It was always there. But it needed to be unblocked, literally unblocked. Like we say, Be'er Miriam. Be'er Miriam is associated with the explanations of Torah that Moshe gives to Bnei Israel of the whole Torah. Be'er Miriam was blocked until Moshe reopened it after she passed away. So, okay, it has to flow. Therefore, I would like to suggest, for the virtue of our study, that Moshe not only became a great a composer of literature, but that it was the most persuasive and logical argument in sequence that was ever delivered. In other words, the master teacher of all time. So that means there is absolutely nothing in Dvarim that is happenstance, thrown in. So again, this takes issue with the chinuch's approach, who says there's so many mitzvahs here, I don't know how to make a quilt out of all of these, the fabric of all these mitzvahs. The Ramban says, no, everything's in order, everything has logical order unless you tell me otherwise. But then I would just say, applying this thought of the Ramban, let's make an assumption. I'd like to make an assumption that Moshe absolutely answered every single question, anticipated every single problem, right? And organized the mitzvos in such a fashion that it built to a conclusion, from a beginning to a conclusion, and it was the most forceful presentation ever made. Do you go with me on that? Does that strike you at odd? Have you heard this before?
No, but it sounds amazing. You would think that that's where they would start in yeshiva, to give up the whole picture before
structure,
diving into the particulars.
Well, Chazal say start with Vayikra because the holy ones, little ones, yeah. But as we mature, right, then we've got to be doresh the smuchim. We've got to take a look at the message within the message. The message within the message. Okay. So what I'd like to start with is an introduction to what Yemei Ratzon are. Yemei Ratzon is that Moshe had a very, very sophisticated, step-by-step progression that he was talking to people who had matured in the book of Bamidbar. The purpose of Bamidbar, if you recall, what do we learn about Bamidbar? What is Bamidbar's purpose? Bamidbar means you're not ready to go in Eretz Yisrael. You're still in training camp. And step by step, as we move through Book of Bamidbar, Klal Yisrael throws off another impediment, another blockage, another klipa. We get rid of Korach, we get rid of Dasan Ba'aviram. We have problems with the Meraglim, we get rid of them. Right? We move on and on and on. We get rid of Bilam. We got a lot of impediments in our path. One by one, the Anan HaKavod Ke'ilu is moving us through all those impediments until we're ripe and ready to stand on our own 2 feet and go into Eretz Yisrael. There's only one problem. Moshe Rabbeinu's not going. And that is a huge problem. Because they needed to be prepared not only to do what was necessary to survive in the Midbar and work with Hashem and be able to keep contact with the Shekhinah and not lose touch like so many of them did, 600,000 plus, right? But also to do it without Moshe Rabbeinu's physical presence. Now that's a tall order.
The training wheels are coming off.
Not only the training wheels coming off, but the teacher is disappearing. You know, it's really nice when you learn how. I remember when I learned how to ride a bike. So I was up in Albert's Bungalow Colony, right near Grossinger's. That was a great place to go, right? We used to go to the health club and get the fresh orange juice. Nothing like it. The Schwartz and ice cream back in the day. So you start with training wheels, a nice smooth path. And here's the problem. At some point, the guy behind you is holding on to the bike when the training wheels come off, right? Or he doesn't tell you the training wheels are coming off. And at a certain point, you're riding and he tells you, guess what? I took off the training wheels, and you thought I was holding you after the training wheels came off, and I wasn't even holding you, and you rode on your own. You have to ride on your own now. Now, it is true that Yehoshua actually played the role of mentor that in the stead of Moshe Rabbeinu. That is true. So they had trust and faith, as it says in the beginning of the book of Yoshua. It says, if you'll be with us like Moshe, we'll give you the power to be a king. The Parak Aleph of Yoshua, it says, they give him the powers, they give him complete power, like the Melech here, meaning life and death. That's ultimately the king's ultimate power, is to choose to execute those who are going against his way, right? Life and death. He said, we'll give you power. You can kill any of us that don't listen to you on one condition. You deliver the goods. You produce the results that we would have expected Moshe Rabbeinu. No, yeah, great deal. All right, yeah, exactly. But that's why going over the Yarden was so important, that it was done in a miraculous fashion, right? They floated over the water. And that's why it was important to start off, as we said, with Yericho, which was, again, a more of a miraculous victory, right? With the call of Yaacov, as we said. But no doubt that the book of Dvarim is meant to give them all the tools necessary to defeat their fears, their worries, their concerns, and to give them the information that they will need to be successful in setting up a Malchut HaTorah in Eretz Yisrael. So let's take a look. I'm giving you overall structure of Devarim now. Okay, first Parsha is Parshas Devarim. So what do we learn in Parshas Devarim? Only one mitzvah. Very interesting. There's only one mitzvah. The mitzvah is to set up a manhig shelo limnot chacham, that's not a chacham b'chachmas HaTorah. The supremacy of chachmas HaTorah. That's step one. If our leader doesn't see themselves as the foundation of everything, being chachmas HaTorah applied to each and every situation, then we have nothing. That's it. It's a non-starter. Boy, how close are we to that today?
Oh, boy.
It's it. Ultimately, there has to be a brain trust of Klal Yisrael. It doesn't mean that they have to do everything themselves. Okay, so the Haredi parties actually do try to set up such a thing. Agudas Yisrael in America by Rabbi Moshe Shiur, which was terrifically successful in many ways, did absolutely do that. That was his success. He didn't take on the leadership himself. He formed a group of Chachamim. He had Chachamim to work with. He had Rav Moshe, and he had Rav Hutner, and he had Rav Gifter, and he had Rav Yaacov, from Torah Shiva Torah Das. He had. But that's number one. So the first premise, which is Parshas Devarim, is the preeminence that the chachma that's going to be used, which is the planning, the ideas, the concepts, the vision, must be chachmas HaTorah based. That's it. It does not work any other way. And I want to tell you something. This is not only because of Bnei Yisrael, it's because of Eretz Yisrael. You think Eretz Yisrael is an inanimate partner? No, it's not. People look at Eretz Yisrael and they'll say, well, it's like a land, like any other land. Rocks and minerals, you know what I'm saying? It's got some water, it's got some mountains, it's got a lot of burnt forests right now. It's hurting. Eretz Yisrael's hurting. It's in, what are they? The burn center. Think about it as a person. It's in a burn center right now. It's just this very tragic situation. I'm talking about what's going on in Gaza. And now they want to empower those people with even greater power and greater success and more money. Is this Chachmas HaTorah?
Yeah.
It would be as smart as a doctor in the burn unit saying, go out and play with some firecrackers or something. Let's see how well you do. Or don't take the baths, or don't take the treatments. Let's see how well you do. Chachmas HaTorah, preeminent. Number one. It's the only mitzvah in the book of Devarim, and I think that's so poetic because one, like Hashem is one. Let's get the one fact down. Chachmas HaTorah is what Eretz Yisrael requires. It will not respond to other Chachmas successfully. You have to have a relationship with Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is not like other lands. It is not inanimate. It's animate. What do I mean by that? It has its own life force energy. What do you mean? Rocks are alive? Yes. The rocks of Eretz Yisrael are alive. That's why so many of the Chachamim, what did they do when they came to Eretz Yisrael? They kissed the rocks. They kissed the dirt. What are they kissing dirt for? What sense does that make? It's only if you believe that Eretz Yisrael is like an entity, a live entity, that you can have a relationship with. Then you give that's who you give a kiss to. Give a kiss to a person. Eretz Yisrael is animate. It will respond to you based on what you do and based on how you behave. Like any relationship, right? You need shalom bias. You need shalom bias with Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael, what's a violation of shalom bias of Eretz Yisrael? That Eretz Yisrael will not tolerate. Right? Shemitah. Shabbos. Eretz Yisrael is the place where Shabbos, which is the divine blueprint of creation, right, has to be how things work. You cannot have the day off in Israel on Sunday. It doesn't work. And thank God it isn't. Because it would be a warping. Eretz Yisrael wouldn't go for that. It wouldn't go for that. That's why the Arabs can never really do anything with Eretz Yisrael. Because they work on Shabbos. And they're not Shomer Shabbos. And they can't relate to that whole thing. It's just, they're not anywhere near that level. Goy Shabbos Chayav Misa. So it requires Shabbos, which means very specific structure. I saw in the Bnei Yissaschar, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov in Torah Yud Aleph says something amazing. He says the 6 days of the week correspond to what? The 6 orders of the Mishnah. And he brings down from Kabbalah, and this very source from the Zohar, he says that the angel that is the CEO of the world, do you know who that angel is? There's one angel, people Kabbalah, who's Hashem's CEO. He runs the systems of the world on Hashem's behalf. You know what his name is? Metatron. Metatron is his name. He's the archangel. He controls all the systems. Now, what does that mean? Every country has its own malach that controls that district, and they're an ornery bunch. I mean, those guys are not so simple. And then, of course, there's the Malach Michael, who's in charge of Am Yisrael. So everybody answers to him. The winds have their own malachim, and the species have their own malachim. There's a malach of the birds. There's somebody in charge of birds. Hashem is the most supremely organized that you could ever imagine. Read the Ramchal. Ramchal shows you how there's a corporate structure. Everybody has to answer. In fact, every hour of the day has its own bet din shel mala. Did you know that? Isn't that? I mean, it's encouraging and discouraging at one time. Because if you really blew this hour, okay, we're getting a different, you're getting transferred to a different court. So if you didn't do well in that court, and they judged you very negatively, maybe in this court you'll have a more favorable judge. It's like lahavdil in traffic court. You want to get that really nice judge. You never know who's the nice judge that's going to let you off the hook. You never know who that is, right? So you got to get to and you need a good lawyer. And who are the lawyers? The tzaddikim. The tzaddikim are the lawyers. Moshe Rabbeinu was the ultimate lawyer of Am Yisrael, the ultimate, who could go into every situation and rescue Klal Yisrael from its harshest judgments, within reason. Not completely, because he was Mashiach for his generation, but he wasn't the final. He wasn't allowed to finish the job. Like we said, he didn't go to Eretz Yisrael, which left room for everybody else, the disciples of Moshe, to step in and do their best until the Neshama Moshe will come back. And by the way, that is what Tishrei corresponds to, is the Shevet Ephraim, who is Mashiach ben Yosef, says the Bnei Yissaschar, and Nisan is Mashiach ben David. So these 2 months are the months in which there's the most tikkun, there's most power, most kedusha, and the world and Eretz Yisrael can be set straight. And that's what we're preparing for now. We're preparing for the first day of Tishrei, which will be Rosh Hashanah. Now, so that's the book of Dvar. That's how Eretz Yisrael is going to work. Chachmas HaTorah. Vayeschanan. We go into some basics. What are the basics? Look at the mitzvos. Achdus Hashem. Understand how God operates. Hashem is echad. Hashem is one. There's no multiple forces. You're going to be in Eretz Yisrael. There's no 5 gods to deal with, like the Canaanite gods. You got 7 nations and 7 different gods. No. There's one Hashem. That's it. There's Ahavas Hashem. You've got to promote God. Ahavas Hashem means you do like Moshe, you do like Avram Avinu. You go out and you run and you grab people and you makariv them to Hashem. Any which way you can grab them. You can't get them other way, you give them food. Start with free food. Works every time. He was the original, Kiddush. I heard one rabbi said, I built 3 synagogues based on 3 words. Kiddush to follow. He built 3 communities. So, Avos Hashem, Talmud Torah. You have to know the Chachmas HaTorah. The mitzvah of Talmud Torah appears in Vayeschanan, as does the Aseret Dibros, the basic core, the basic constitution. The basic constitution of life in Eretz Yisrael, the Aseret Dibros, which is a bridge to all the mitzvahs. The mitzvah of Kriya Shema, which is your allegiance to Hashem. When you say the pasuk Shema, what are you supposed to think? That Hashem is God over all the 4 corners of the world, Hashem Echad, and that you are loyal to God. Every day that when you say Shema in the morning, all the women are exempt, but they can daven it obviously on their own. There's a time-bound mitzvah, but it's that you show, I'm here, I'm checking in for work, I'm punching the clock. I'm here to work for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because He's the master of the world, and I'm here. Tefillin, mezuzah, listening to a Navi. Core information. And Vayeschanan also includes Harigas Sheva Amamim and Isser Chasnus, to rid Eretz Yisrael of the 7 nations who each of them represent the antithesis of our Ushpizin, the anti-chesed, the anti-gvura, the anti-tiferes, everything anti. They represent the polar opposite of Kedusha. You got to get rid of them. You can't tolerate evil. That's an important theme. And by the way, if I had to just think about the world's biggest problem, is the toleration of evil. We tolerate evil. Not only do we tolerate evil, but we promote it. We support it. It's one thing to tolerate it. It's another thing to celebrate it. One of my friends sent me a video of a bark mitzvah. Did you hear about this?
Oh, yeah.
A bark mitzvah. A bar mitzvah for a dog. It's called a bark. I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend you. I know you like to learn a lot. You're constantly hearing Shiur. Maybe he's an exception.
It's a mockery.
I mean, if we're already going to say that the definition of marriage is no longer man and woman, that's what's being espoused by the quote-unquote, majority of the Jewish people, not including in Eretz Yisrael, unfortunately. Hopefully not. Then where do you draw the border, the boundary? Well, you can give a bar mitzvah for his dog. I mean, that means that at some point you should have a chassan a bar mitzvah. the chassan bar mitzvah, right? So then when, just to prevent it from becoming a real chassan. Where's the line? So, the Sheva Amim have to go. We cannot tolerate them. They are not something that is compatible with Eretz Yisrael, because they are misnaged lemalchus shamayim. And if you can get up there and declare that you affirm something which is against the will of Hashem, get out, get them out. Eretz Yisrael will not tolerate it. Okay? Okay, so that's Vas Chanan. So far, so good? We have the Chachmas Torah, and then the basic download of all the primary information of Torah is Vas Chanan. Now we move on. Parshas Yaakov. Yaakov is in the realm of not falling into the trap, the very, very seductive lure of what? Avoda Zara. Since Eretz Yisrael was filled with Avoda Zara, in fact, the Mishnah says, in the name of Rabbi Akiva, in Maseches Avoda Zara, he says, Ani over va'adun lefanecha. He says to the rabbis, and he was a man in the field for the first 40 years, right? He wasn't sitting in the base medrash. He was out in the fields and the valleys, and he was a rural person. He says, I will show you that there's an avodah zarah. Any place that you see har gavoa, what's har gavoa? A large mountain. Giva nisa, a steep valley. Ve'etz ra'anan, and a flourishing tree. Da sheyesh sham avodah zarah. There was not a nook and cranny of Eretz Yisrael, any remarkable location that had the least bit of, like being a marker, was an avodah zarah. So there's a great danger of, and if you fall prey to avodah zarah, the whole thing collapses, right? So Parshas Yaakov, and I think that's Pshat Yaakov Tishmun. Yaakov Tishmun, there's many, many drashas about what Yaakov Tishmerun means. We didn't speak about it because I wasn't here. But Yaakov, Rashi says, even the most tiny mitzvos, in other words, even, what do we say about avodah zarah? Lo yidbak b'yadcha me'uma min ha'cherem. You're not allowed to have even the teensiest part of avodah zarah. That's what Parshas Yaakov is. Get all the way to the bottom. Yaakov is the sehil. To the depths. Clean out, like a Pesach cleaning. Hashem says, Yaakov tishmu. I don't want you to leave. I'm listening. I'm doing 50%, 60%, 70%. No. 100%. Not 99%. 100%. Because there's a great danger here. A little bit of avodah zarah sticks to you. That's all you need. That's all you need. So we got to root out avodah zarah. So hence the mitzvah lo tavi toeva toch beisecha, which is referring to avodah zarah. Also birkas hamazon. Why is birkas hamazon in that category? Because what's so easy to happen regarding Eretz Yisrael and mazon? Yeah, it says v'ram levavecha. You're gonna see material success. Your fields will be flourishing. Your crops will be doing well. Your animals will be proliferating. You've got meat. You've got wool. You've got oil. You've got